Hi, everyone. Today I want to talk about names. Names are incredibly important, and as furries, we have the unique opportunity to choose the names that we want to represent us as our fursona names. There's no right or wrong way to choose a name for your fursona, but I wanted to get into my process for how I found my name. I know a few people have asked why I'm Ansublue, how I got the name, and I'd like to share that. Before I get into the why for choosing Ansu, I want to talk about the character that I used before Ansu even existed. My old name for everything interacting with the furry community was my character, Bugbear Vigs. A few people out there might recognize the name since I streamed for a year and a half ish before Ansu was even conceptualized. Now, Vigs was always a character, not a fursona, but I like to choose naming conventions for characters in the same way that I would a fursona name. When I decide that I'm naming someone, I like to think about what's important to them and what's important to me. For those who don't know, bugbears are goblinoid monsters from Dungeons and Dragons that are like 7.5 feet tall, hairy, brutish creatures. In the lore, they're tired all the time and sleep all day because their patron god siphons off their energy so that he can always stay awake. Now, when bugbears are awake, they're aggressive, angry, and brutally dangerous, with more than one of them being a serious danger to low level parties. In making Vigs, I wanted to develop him into something different from their lore. With Vigs being very different from the rest of the bugbears, as adventurers tend to be very different from their peers, I wanted him to embody energy, curiosity, and compassion. So I looked for what could sum up those traits and I settled on Vigor, or Vigs for short. He's a fun character that I really enjoyed crafting and building over time, and I'm very happy with the time that I spent with him as my face for the furry community. Hell, I still have some emotes on my Twitch account that are just too cute to get rid of, so he's always going to be around a little bit. When it comes to Ansu, however, I didn't really know where to start with him. Because I'm familiar with building characters, I created a bunch of lore for him, that felt wrong because I wanted him to just be me, and giving him a bunch of backstory that isn't from me felt like I was separating him from myself. So I threw out all the lore pretty quickly. Not that there's anything wrong with having lore for a fursona, it just doesn't fit well for me and what I want. Since I wanted Ansu to be like me, though, I thought about the things that I wanted to be and what I wanted to embody. I want to be able to build relationships with the people around me, establish community. I want to be creative. I want to share the things that I've learned with others. So I started poking around in things that I've found importance in previously. And I took a look at Norse mythology. When I chose my real life name, Ash, one of the things that contributed to help me connect to the name is the Norse myth that the first man was carved from an ash tree that Odin then breathed life into. Now, Ansu does not sound like a Norse inspired name. In fact, if you look up the name, it'll come back with having African or Indian roots, which I didn't really realize until I'd already settled on the name. I definitely don't claim those heritages. They're not mine to claim, but it has some cool synchronicities that I'll talk about in a little bit. In looking into Norse mythology, I looked at the Norse runes, which are called the Elder Futhark. When I was a teenager, a friend and I would write notes to each other in Elder Futhark and see if we could understand what the other meant when they strung together certain runes. And we even made little handmade guide sheets to help us translate the meanings of them. It wasn't a very effective means of communication, but it was fun, and the runes have just kind of stuck with me since then. So I took a little bit of a deeper look into the runes. The very first rune in Elder Futhark is the Ansu's rune, which is the rune for divine communication, inspiration, and wisdom, as well as art in the form of poetry. That lined up really well with the things that I wanted to represent and develop in myself: connection to others and creativity. I dropped the Z to make the name a little bit easier to say, and voila, new name acquired. Now, as I said before, there are some synchronicities across cultures with the name that I find interesting. In African cultures, the name can mean God is with us or the one who's blessed. And in Indian cultures, it roughly translates into ray of light, which can be interpreted as like hope or enlightenment. Both of which have some connection to the divine communication aspect of the Ansu's rune. Again, I do not claim these cultural interpretations as mine, but I just thought the similarities were really neat. As for the blue part of the name, if I'm being honest, it was just tacked on because I like the color blue and it rhymes with Ansu. It doesn't always have to be a super deep meaning for every part of the name. And the blue part is just kind of a username thing rather than the actual name of the Fursona anyway, so it just kind of works in that way. Anyway, all of this is to say that there are lots of different ways to find the name for yourself or your Fursona, and all of them are valid. However, I would consider what's important to them and yourself and identify what you want the journey or development to be and explore from there. You might just end up at a name generator site anyway, and that's okay. If nothing else, it gives you an idea of your values and the character's values that will be important for shaping the way you or the character grows. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel. I hope to see you again for future videos. Have a good night, everyone.